While good King Asa of Judah is merely reigning in his 27th year in the southern kingdom, Zimri, another murderer of a northern king, Elah, takes over as king of Israel in the north. Our text tells us he only reigned for 7 days. Amazing. Let's see what happened. I'm Ken Godevanis, and this is Digging for Scriptural Gems. Thank you for joining us again. Today we're studying 1 Kings chapter 16, verses 15 to 28. You may wish to pause the video and read the passage in your Bible or follow along in parallel. Now the plot gets pretty messed up. Zimri had killed Elah, as I had mentioned. Meanwhile, the people were camped or deployed at Gibbethon, a place held by the Philistines, where previously, we read about this in chapter 15, verse 27, previously there, Baasha had murdered Nadab. While there at this time, the people had heard of Zimri killing Elah, and so they made Omri, the commander of their army, king over the northern kingdom of Israel, right there and then. I marvel how easy it was in those days to just get new heads of state and go into battle to defeat the ones you thought were the bad ones. That's not the case today. In any case, the people now decided to do battle with Zimri under the leadership of Omri, chapter 16, verse 17. And they did this in Tirzah. When he saw what was happening and the fact that Tirzah was going down, what did Zimri do? Well, this time, the bad guy basically committed suicide. He went into the king's house. Robert Jameson says he isolated himself there, locked himself in, set the house on fire over him, and died in the flames. Jameson goes on to say, quote, he chose to perish himself and reduce everything to ruin rather than that the palace and royal treasure should fall into the hands of his successful rival. No, we couldn't have that. In any case, another sign of an evil, greedy person, perhaps even a sick man. And verse 19 repeats the reasons as to why he did that. Simply, he sinned and did evil in the sight of God, walked in the ways of Jeroboam. Yes, Jeroboam's sins are still being paid for, and he too made Israel sin. And verse 20 tells us the rest of his deeds we can read about elsewhere. But wait, there's more. One would think the people of the northern kingdom would now be happy since their newly chosen Omri had his enemy Zimri out of the way. Not so fast. The text, verse 21, tells us the people now were split as to who should lead them. Their loyalties were torn. Half wanted Omri, the other half wanted Tibni, the son of Ginath. The NET says that the supporters of Omri were stronger than those of Tibni, and we guess they fought it out. And the very next sentence says, Tibni died, and Omri became or stayed on as king. This all happened in Asa's 31st year as king of the southern kingdom of Judah. Omri reigned for 12 years, 6 of which were from his palace in Tirzah. Verse 24 tells us he bought a hill for just 2 talents of silver, and on it he started a construction project there and built a city eventually called Samaria, after the name of the person selling it to him, Shemer. But verse 25 tells us he too did evil in the sight of the Lord, and here's the kicker. The text says he acted more wickedly than all of those who were before him, end of quote. How did he do that? Well, you guessed it. He walked in the ways of Jeroboam, made Israel sin, and provoked God with his idols. And of course, we can read more about him, we are told elsewhere. Our last verse says he died and was buried in Samaria, leaving his son Ahab to become king in his place. We'll stop there and dig a little deeper. Going back to what the people or the army had heard about Zimri, we note that the report they got was, and I quote, Zimri had conspired against the king and had assassinated him, end of quote. And the rest of the story followed. As we study these passages during the months before the 224 U.S. election, in fact, we're less than a month away today, we have seen 2 attempts of assassinating the former president of the country, and at least one more attempt that was thwarted before it got off the ground. Can you imagine what would have happened if God had allowed that president to have been killed? I believe the consequences would have been similar as in the days we are reading about here. Thank God he was not hurt badly. The 2 talents that Omri paid to buy the hill property amounted to about 150 pounds of silver. Now, in today's economy, that would equate to over $77,000 US, or about $105,000 Canadian. Samaria became the capital city of the northern kingdom of Israel. Omri built a capital that was politically neutral, being a new city with no previous tribal associations, and in a strong defensive position. Remember, it was on top of a hill. Commentator Wiseman says, quote, excavations at Samaria show that Omri was the first builder on the 100-meter-high hill. This site was a good choice, for it was to withstand several sieges in the future, end of quote. A word about Omri, the 6th king of Israel since the division of the once unified kingdom. Jeroboam was the first king, and each of the 5 kings after him followed in the evil ways of Jeroboam. Do you get the picture? What Jeroboam was to provide to provide a very bad model for at least the 5 kings that came after him. Fathers, grandfathers, what are you and I modeling? And if it's bad, how will the chain be broken? 2 more things about Omri. In the records of secular history, Omri is one of the more successful and famous kings of ancient Israel. According to commentator Dilday, Omri's fame as a monarch, while downplayed by the author of Kings, was widely recognized in other places. The Moabite stone discovered in 1868 refers to him as the conqueror of Moab. Assyrian inscriptions make mention of him as a great warrior. For years, the Assyrians referred to Israel as the house of Omri. But according to Knapp, quote, his name means heaping, and by his iniquity he helped to heap up wrath against his dynasty, executed finally 36 years later on his great-grandson Jeroboam, to the total extinction of the guilty house. End of quote. I also want to point out the various editors say that the Old Greek manuscript adds 8 additional verses at the end of the passage we are studying today. They refer us to 1 Kings 22, verses 41 to 44 for more information. Although why they do that exactly is not clear, at least to me at this point. But we'll take another look at this when we come to it later. Chuck Smith believes that when the people of Israel will split in their loyalty between Omri and Tibni, a civil war broke out in the north to settle the matter, which he takes from the phrase, quote, Omri's supporters were stronger, end of quote. Something to think about. Remember, these folks had already split the country between themselves and Judah in the south, and now a civil war was taking place up north. Robert Jameson supports the idea when he writes, quote, the factions that ensued occasioned a 4 years duration. You can look that up, compare it with 1 Kings chapter 16, verse 15. A 4 years duration of anarchy or civil war, end of quote. So Omri's early part of his reign, 4 years, was a contested one with Tibni, and then after that, it was a peaceful reign. Back to Zimri for a second. David Gusick says the fact that the people decided to reject Zimri in 7 days indicates that the idea of a democracy was strong in Israel at the time. The people would have their say, even though often there was a high cost involved, but still better than a tyrant that would rule for a long time. If one can get past all the action in this passage, one can stop long enough to reflect on the lessons we each can learn from it. Bottom line for me was, and still is, do it your way and you'll not like where you end up. Do it God's way and your life will be more blessed. Next time, we'll look at the reign of his son Ahab. Join us for that. In the meantime, please keep studying your Bible. If you like what you see or hear, please indicate so on the video you're watching, on the page that you're watching the video from. And if you haven't done so already, thank you for those that have. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Digging for Scriptural Gems. Till next time.